Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to tackle a huge topic, the final, absolutely climactic years of World War II. This was a time of just unparalleled destruction, but it's also the period that really forged the world that we all live in today. So how does a world completely on fire pull itself back from the edge? We're going to follow that incredible story from 1942 all the way to 1945. It's a period that shows us humanity's absolute darkest acts, but also its most determined, incredible fight for victory. Okay, let's dive right in.
You know, while all eyes were on the front lines, a totally different kind of war was being waged across occupied Europe. It was a systematic campaign of industrialized hate. And to really understand how the war ended, we have to confront this dark reality first.
Now, it is so crucial to understand this. The Holocaust didn't just happen out of nowhere. It was a deliberate, escalating campaign. It didn't start with violence. It actually started with laws, the Nuremberg Laws, stripping people of their rights and citizenship. From there, it grew into organized terror like Kristallnacht. And then finally, with the invasion of the Soviet Union, it became systematic mass murder, all formalized, chillingly, at the Wannsee Conference. The Nazi regime created this horrifying distinction in its camp system. You had concentration camps, which were brutal centers of forced labor and persecution. But the extermination camps, places like Treblinka, they were something else entirely. They were literally death factories, built for one purpose and one purpose only, industrialized murder. The key takeaway here is just how calculated and mechanical the whole thing was. 6 million. That's the estimated number of Jews who were systematically murdered in the Holocaust. And that staggering number doesn't even include the millions of other victims. Roma people, Soviet prisoners of war, Poles, political dissenters, anyone deemed undesirable by the regime. But even as this incredible darkness was spreading, the year 1942 marked a critical turning point. The Axis war machine, which had seemed completely unstoppable, finally started to show some cracks. So let's take a look at where that tide really began to turn.
So, from August 1942 to February 1943, in the rubble of a single Soviet city, one of the most important battles in all of history was fought. The fighting was just apocalyptic. We're talking hand-to-hand combat in the ruins for control of a single building.
Just look at that number. Nearly 2 million combined casualties. It's almost impossible to wrap your head around. But the Soviet victory there was a devastating psychological blow to Germany. It completely shattered the myth of Nazi invincibility, and it marked the moment the strategic initiative on the Eastern Front was lost for good.
And just a few months before that, in June of '42, a similar turning point happened over in the Pacific. At the Battle of Midway, the U.S. Navy dealt a catastrophic defeat to the Japanese fleet. It just obliterated its carrier strength and slammed the brakes on its expansion across the ocean. Okay, so with the Axis now on the defensive in the East and the Pacific, the Allies began the long, bloody process of taking the fight directly to German-occupied Europe. The Allied strategy was this relentless, multi-front advance. First, they had to secure North Africa to use it as a launching pad. Then, they jumped into Sicily and mainland Italy, which forced Germany to divert precious resources. And all of this, it was all building up to the main event, the invasion of France. On one single day, June 6, 1944, what we now call D-Day, 160,000 Allied troops landed on the beaches of Normandy. It was, and it still is, the largest amphibious assault in all of human history. This quote, it just captures the brutal reality of that day, especially on that stretch of sand they codenamed Omaha Beach. This is where grand strategy met the pure hell of combat. But through sheer, unbelievable determination, the Allied forces secured that foothold in Fortress Europe.
And then, just a little over 2 months later, Paris was free. The city's liberation sparked this indescribable joy. It became this incredibly powerful symbol that Nazi domination in Western Europe was finally crumbling. So by 1945, there was really no doubt about how the war would end. But that final year would be one of shocking discoveries, fanatical resistance, and destruction on a scale the world had never, ever seen before. As the Soviet forces pushed westward, they stumbled upon the Auschwitz concentration and extermination camp. As they and the other Allied forces liberated camp after camp, the full industrial horror of the Holocaust was finally revealed to a completely shocked world.
The spring of 1945 saw this rapid, dramatic collapse. I mean, even as the Allies were mourning the sudden death of President Roosevelt, the end came so fast for the Axis leaders. In just a few weeks, Mussolini was executed, Hitler took his own life, and Germany formally surrendered. Just like that, the war in Europe was over.
But the Pacific was a different story. The fighting there only got more ferocious. As U.S. forces clawed their way closer and closer to Japan, the battles for tiny islands like Iwo Jima and Okinawa produced these staggering casualties. The numbers painted a really grim picture for American planners. A direct invasion of Japan would cost an unimaginable number of lives. And this fanatical defense, really epitomized by the terrifying kamikaze attacks, it showed Japan's willingness to fight to the very last man. It just reinforced this growing belief in Washington that a conventional invasion, well, it just wasn't an option.
The alternative was something new, something terrifying. To force a surrender and avoid the absolute carnage of an invasion, President Truman authorized the use of atomic bombs on the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And in 2 blinding flashes, the world was violently ushered into the atomic age.
On September 2, 1945, Japan formally surrendered. The deadliest conflict in human history was finally over. But it left behind a world that was just fundamentally, irrevocably changed.
And this table here really lays it all out, doesn't it? The post-war transformation was absolute. The age of the European colonial empires was over. It was replaced by a new, bipolar world dominated by 2 superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union. The failed League of Nations gave way to the United Nations, and the very nature of war itself was changed forever by the dawn of the atomic age.
50 million. That's the estimated total number of dead, a cost in blood and treasure, and suffering so immense that it completely reshaped the globe and the entire course of human history.
You know, the war proved that democracies can find the resilience to overcome even the most formidable tyranny. But its lessons, they're a stark reminder of the terrible cost of appeasement, and maybe, just maybe, of the constant need to stand against aggression before it's already too late.